Welcome back, viewers. You are still tuned into Prime Live. And today we actually have the pleasure of speaking with Lerato Senoko Dube, who is a highly accomplished career coach, author, and the founder of LeratoInspires Pty Ltd. She is also the author of an empowering book titled, Are You Divorcing a Narcissist? Get Your Power Back, where she shares her personal story of overcoming adversity and empowers others to break free from toxic environments. Today, we have the opportunity to explore her journey, her insights into her career, as well as life transformation and her vision for the future. Good evening, Lerato. Thank you so much for joining us on Prime Live.
Thank you for the invitation.
It's such a privilege for us to be able to have this conversation with you, particularly because these are such pertinent topics that we need to be talking about all across South Africa when it comes to breaking free from toxic relationships and getting back your power. And, I think a lot of people are looking forward to hearing some insight from you. But before we get into all of that, can you tell us more about your journey from the space science industry to actually becoming a career coach as well as a community developer, and then coming on to being an author?
Well, I think from a young age, I have been interested in connecting puzzles, looking back, looking at the numbers, getting excited with new information. And that's definitely what got me into the space science and technology field at the time. And I qualified, my curiosity led me to actually qualifying in that environment and then coming back to work for public service to actually accomplish what I had accomplished and worked together with my colleagues in the public service to make sure that at least space science and technology can be consumed by laymen, whether they know it or not, and it can change their lives. And that transition then went into me becoming an executive life coach. One, it was inspired by my journey of divorce, but secondly, it was getting to know who I am, what I love, and what makes me, spark. And what normally makes me spark in putting back the puzzle was actually engaging with people, interacting with them, finding a way of solving our daily challenges, and seeing how the basic principles of physical science or technology can actually be applied to understand how the mind works. And certainly that actually pivoted me into the executive career coaching.
I mean, that's incredibly impressive. I mean, to be able to say that you are so multifaceted, that your educational background is so incredibly diverse, and that you've had experience in so many different fields is absolutely incredible. Speaking about that, your educational background is incredibly diverse with qualifications that range from, remote sensing to neuro-linguistic programming. How have these different fields of studies been able to influence your approach to your coaching style, as well as your interest, as well as your impact in the area of personal development?
Well, I would say that once you delve deep in finding out how the mind works, you actually get to find that science, how the mind works, whether it's called psychology, philosophy, whether you can actually even go into theology, you get to understand that we are all looking at the same principles, but the interpretation of it may be different and diverse. And I would say that this has given me the opportunity to explore how else I can use the knowledge that I have to make sure that I solve the imminent problems in my life and the lives of my clients. And quite frankly, when you look at it, knowledge is power, but when you actually apply it, that's where the power comes from. And this has actually allowed me to self-express once I knew who I am and what is it that I love. And it was easy for me to actually take all these other things that I know and bring them one to make sure that I can assist people that speak different languages in terms of understanding. Whether they are scientists, I can make examples in a way that they understand. And even if they are not, I'm able to translate that into what they understand. But the target and the goal is actually to find a way to grow ourselves and change our lives.
That was very powerfully said. I love that you spoke on the importance of tailoring coaching and personal development to how someone's mind works. If you have, a mathematical or scientific mind, you need to tailor the conversation in that direction in order to be able to relate to them better. And on the other hand, if you are dealing with somebody who's very creative and, is very theatrical or very, theoretical in the way that they think, you can then tailor the coaching to them in that way. I love that you touched on that, because it's so important to be able to find coaches that are able to resonate with you and speak to you on your level and on your level of understanding, like you said. And I love that you said knowledge is power, but implementing that and being able to understand that knowledge is a completely different thing. So I love that you've touched on that. But amongst the many, many accolades that you do have, I mean, you are also an author, and writing a book based on your personal experience can be incredibly challenging. And it can also be such a vulnerable experience to be able to pour your experiences onto paper. Now, can you take us through your writing process of your title book, Are You Divorcing a Narcissist? Get Your Power Back? Take us through the journey of your writing process and perhaps even some of the challenges that you might have encountered along the way.
Well, the journey of my writing process, if you have been to school and you've been reading and writing, you may take it for granted that you actually know how to write. And I think me wanting to pen down this book, it was to actually tell a story that I tell so many times to my clients. And this time I thought it will be lovely just to have a book, especially for those that will not be able to speak to me. But in this journey of putting it down and doing my best to be vulnerable, I had to also reflect on my journey. The purpose of that was I was going through a divorce, and it was now going for the third year of going through the same process. Some of it, those cycles were repeating. And I wondered how other people that may be facing the same challenge are actually feeling, and how do they cope with it? How does life continue while you are in limbo? Because certainly, if you are not married, neither are you divorced, you are actually in limbo. And putting it down on paper, one, it was also challenging because as much as I love to teach and I can be a good speaker, the challenge was putting that in a way that can be very simple and comprehensible to the next person. I also got to understand that having been through this experience of what I call or deem to have been a narcissistic marriage or relationships thereof, is that we can also get very attached to the stories, and we forget to look at what the solutions are and how to get out of the challenge that we're in. So the biggest challenge for me was not to dwell so much on the gory stories of what could have happened, but find a way of teaching and understanding how people can get out of that mess that they got themselves into. And yes, the journey has been long. The conceptualization of the book was actually in 2017 when I realized that I'm actually going to be in a long haul. And as much as I wanted to write it at that time, I thought perhaps I'm not yet ready. But I did that through journaling, because my journal would then help me to have those prompts that I would eventually use when I'm writing my book. And I could see how I am actually growing in understanding who I am, how my mind works, and what got me into this relationship. I then, of course, in this journey, got to understand that sometimes we are influenced by environments that we grow up in. And so we do get to allow these relationships and this toxicity to continue and perpetuate because it's familiar and it's normal. And now the challenge for me was to say, now that I'm finding myself in a working space where I don't do this on a full-time basis, can I get myself out of it? And that was also the journey of rewriting, to say sometimes when you realize that you've taken a path that you may love, but it's not your ultimate, how do you then shift your way out of it? And this also influenced a lot of my writing style, because as much as I thought I knew how to write, I was still having the mathematical way of thinking and wanting to find equations to explain things. And so I had to bring these two worlds together, where I can tell a story and also give some diagrams that would have these kind of equations to try and demonstrate what the meaning of life can be from all perspectives. And so in doing that, I also got to reflect on, being a mother and what do you do as a mother? And at times when you find yourself in abusive environments, having to protect yourself, you might actually, turn a blind eye on the children or not even have the energy to actually be able to look into that. And of course, through the help of working with my clients for the past 6 years in my practice, I got to understand what are the things that we can change, how I can help others, but how to put that on paper for us to even look at what could be our parenting style. But most importantly is how do we keep ourselves safe? But in this journey of doing the same, I had to also remember the script or the script that I gave to my editor to say, remind me when I'm taking too long and I want people to be attached to the stories. So going back and forth and putting it on paper had actually been one of my challenges. But most importantly, just when I thought I'm done with the book, I realized that a lot of women and people that are in abusive environments, even if you take a work environment that is toxic, is that our focus goes into this, that we actually forget to live. So the book does come with a workbook, a manual where you can actually start asking yourself questions and helping you rewrite your own story as you go by. And so that for me was what I could give to the person that will be able to get this book and perhaps start to work on themselves. And I guess in the process of it being a life coach, I also understand that it's not everybody that is used to investing in themselves and investing in getting their mental health in a state that is great. And this could be a start for those that haven't yet done it, or those that think that they get tired of visiting our practices and they can do it on their own.
I'm always incredibly fascinated by each author's writing process, especially when it comes to a topic like this that is so deeply personal and something that you've experienced yourself. I'm always fascinated to hear about the writing experience because, like you said, it can be challenging because you're revisiting some of the most difficult experiences that you have had as well. So it's almost like reliving the entire experience. But like you said, looking at that positive lining and looking at the things you could have learned again from revisiting your experience, and then being brave enough to confront those difficult emotions and those difficult experiences, all for the sake that knowing that one day there might be a woman out there who's going to read your book and who might have the courage to leave a lot sooner than she would have if she hadn't read your book. And more than that, even the healing journey once you've left is still a very long road thereafter. And then being able to have this book as a resource for your healing journey as well is so incredibly brave and so courageous of you to do. And I love that you've incorporated a workbook as well with your book, so that it's not just, you retelling your journey, but you're also investing back into your reader and saying, I want to see you do well and I want to see you progress and heal and move forward from this. Now let's talk a little bit more about narcissistic relationships, for example. These are incredibly complex, right? And can be incredibly damaging on yourself. It can be incredibly damaging on a family environment as well. What are some of the key insights and strategies does your book really, reflect on or refer to provide individuals who are currently in toxic relationships or with a partner who is a narcissist or who is possibly recovering from such a relationship?
Well, what had come through for me to actually see was I needed to also explain why we get into those environments. Because sometimes we find that we start blaming ourselves and it becomes very hard to leave. Yes, we do conform to societal standards, and because we don't want to be judged, we might find ourselves staying long. And so I wanted the reader to understand that there is a reason why you sit in those relationships. There is a way in which your brain changes because that chemical reaction changes the way that you look at things. And therefore, it also affects how your body works. And if your body is numb and you don't know how to express yourself, you can be thinking, but you may not be taking action because you are used to having to protect yourself in this environment. And sometimes after you have left the relationship itself, the healing may take longer because now you are more attached to the feelings that you used to evoke in those relationships. So it's no longer about the particular person that you were with, and it's now about the feeling that you used to get. And in the book, I do refer to it as more being like a person who is using drugs. You miss the feeling of having the drug, even though that you know the drug is not good for you. So this is why sometimes when you leave the drugs, people go into rehab. But when they are in rehab, they are away from the drug. In this case, you are away from your narcissistic spouse, but you need to go through the detox process of identifying what is it that makes you tick. And if you don't identify it, you may have left the narcissist, but this is how people find themselves in a similar marriage the second time and the third time. Or they run into toxic workplaces and they're just changing bosses that are the same. Or they find friendships that are similar. And sometimes you will be thinking, maybe I am cursed. And so during this process, my idea was to make the reader aware of why we're staying in this. And for those that are still contemplating leaving, I also bring them into how they feel, because most of the time how they feel then dictates the chronic illnesses that they'll be having. Majority of the people that stay in these are women. And the unfortunate thing is that women are the ones with the highest statistics of autoimmune diseases. And because of this, if we don't understand how the brain excretes those chemicals that would actually make you sick, then we may not be helping the doctors that are trying to assist us with medicine. And this is the reason why I wanted the reader to understand why you stay, can you get out, the process you're going to go through as you're healing, and also getting to embrace yourself and forgive yourself for being there, but allowing yourself to allow these toxins, if we may call it, to get out of your body, out of your system, out of your thought pattern, and literally out of your life, such that you can get to a space of safety mentally, physically, and the environment. Therefore, you can offer all you are to the next person. And that next person could be your children, your friends. Now you're no longer toxic to your friends. And these are the kind of things I wanted the reader to get out of the book, such that you understand why you stayed, why you should leave, and how to actually go through the process of detoxing these toxins that you had been ingesting for all this time that you've been in this partnership.
I mean, that's incredibly insightful. It's almost as if we are, developing into, or we are rather chasing these unhealthy patterns because you become addicted to the chaos. You don't know what calm and, relaxing lifestyles are. You become so conditioned to that toxic lifestyle that that's all you know, and that's the comfort that your mind seeks because you're comfortable in those toxic and chaotic environments. Lerato, this conversation has been incredibly insightful, and I'm really inspired by the journey you've undertaken, your bravery and courage to share such a deeply personal story on paper so that so many others can benefit from it. We thank you so much for the privilege of being able to speak to you this evening, as well as to gain some understanding and insight into these narcissistic and toxic behaviors. And if we are in any situations like that, whether we are in our friendship circles, social circles, or even in our work circles, as you have pointed out as well, it's important to have that level of self-awareness to see if we are addicted to these toxic cycles and these toxic environments. And in order to break that pattern and really feel empowered, like your book talks about, reclaiming your power and taking back that power, we need to be able to break that cycle to be able to move forward. But we thank you so much for the privilege of your time and to be able to have the opportunity to speak with you on this topic this evening.
Thank you very much.
Viewers at home, that was Lerato, an incredible author who was brave enough to share her deep personal stories of being with a narcissistic partner and her journey of overcoming and in stepping into her power once again. If you would like to, have a look at her book as well as the workbook that it does come with, please do go and get yourself a copy. It's incredibly insightful, and I think we all need to be more self-aware of the kind of toxic environments that we become addicted to. But on that note, it is time for us to head over to an ad break, and we'll come right back.